Welcome back to the show. Check out these headlines. SEC versus Ripple, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, it's not over. What's next? Is there a settlement still on the table? Somebody tell us. We got John Deaton and Tony from Thinking Crypto to break it all down. We got that and so much more. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show. You can follow us on Twitter and YouTube for exclusive content. Right now, $1.72 trillion market cap for crypto. The market is up 0.7%. Bitcoin now 43,700 plus, 2,200 plus and change for Ethereum at the moment. Tether market cap is 90.9 billion plus right now. Number 6 spot as XRP has been taken over by Solana for the moment here. And we see that we're at 61 cents. We're off by 1.2 in the 24-hour and 1.1 on the 7-day. The range of price right now is between 61 and 62 cents. Very tight range, not moving around a lot. So we will leave it there for today. But let's go ahead and look at this. It's linked to, ladies and gentlemen, your access to private investment. And let me tell you this. We all know you can get the best private equity on Link2's platform. Well, how good is it? Well, there's over 322 million invested on these incredible opportunities. But look here where one of them is. Chainalysis, which you can get on Link2's platform. Time 100 most influential companies. And look who's sitting right there. Chainalysis. You know, this really is a remarkable opportunity, ladies and gentlemen. I tell you, it truly is. And to add to that point, you know, picks and shovels, blockchain play. There's no blockchain without Chainalysis. It's, you know, it's how the good guys keep track of bad guys. This, you don't have just like we have an internet and a dark web. Chainalysis is what keeps the new internet, the distributed ledger technology blockchain world on track, ladies and gentlemen, so it doesn't become the dark web. That's where we're at today. Make sure you check out the link to my sponsor, Link2, and get you some Chainalysis today. Christine Lagarde, president of European Central Bank, being an anchor for central bank digital currency innovation with the central bankers is quite important, she says. Oh, yes, the relevance, the control, the power. We mustn't lose it. We mustn't.
Where do we stand? We central bankers. We have been operating as a monetary anchor in relation to the commercial banks and the private money. If we are not in that game, if we are not involved in experimenting, in innovating in terms of digital central bank money, we risk losing the role of anchor that we have played for many, many decades.
I love how she locks up for a second of anchor, right? Not of omnipotent, all powerful, right? You know what I mean? Controlling the rest of you. You know, it's so interesting. This has always been about power and control. There's no question about it. This is John Deaton right here, and we've got the highlights for you here in a second from John Deaton and the interview with Tony. Straight fire. Shout out to Tony for that. But look, this falls in line, and even the highlights that we're going to hear about the case and everything and where it is today, because we need to know, right? And Cody Carbone says big banks are terrified of Bitcoin. It's a direct competitor, and consumer demand for crypto is a large reality check for banks. And it really is. The monopoly isn't unbreakable. Consumers deserve opportunity, not a ban on choice. It's absolutely true. And this is all based on the post that he shared here from Bank Policy Institute, which essentially is saying, amidst an otherwise informative article, there's this statement: crypto has legitimate backers and applications. Firms like Fidelity, BlackRock may soon win approval to launch exchange-traded funds holding Bitcoin, a prospect that has pushed up the token's price. And you know what? We all know that there's a massive line of approvals waiting for spot Bitcoin ETFs. And it is the large legacy players from the traditional markets. And they are going to get their way. I pretty much see that coming. So This is a little overview here from Ashley Prosper, and I thought it was so spot on. Well, Ripple has obviously said that they're honored to be added to the Central Bank of Ireland's list of registered virtual asset service providers, allowing us to provide digital asset services within Ireland. It is a massive, massive license that they've got here and being registered on the list, because it opens them up to the entire European Union. This is remarkable, ladies and gentlemen. And Ashley Prosper says, as we approach the 3-year anniversary of Ripple versus SEC lawsuit, Ripple cements itself as a digital asset provider in Ireland. We will be able to draw upon the luck of the Irish and finally move forward. Will we be able to? And it says, time will tell. 12/22 would be a wonderful Christmas present. It sure would. But you know what? We have John Deaton here, courtesy of Thinking Crypto, and we're going to listen to some of these highlights here. I'm not going to give you the whole thing because the whole thing's fantastic, but I'm going to take and give you a couple segments that I know you're going to want, especially as we close out this year, understanding essentially SEC versus Ripple, what are the next steps, and then we're going to take a look at can Ripple recoup the law fees? And the answer is no. I will give you that one right now. And then we're going to look at, can the SEC appeal? And this is really going to be a very important highlight. But let's pick it up right here and shout out to both of these gentlemen. Here, take a listen.
Oh, your podcast is a security, just by the way. my brass knuckle necklace is a security under Gary Gensler's approach.
Everything, man. It's ridiculous at this point. So let's talk about the Ripple case. Because last we heard, the SEC had dropped the case against Brad Garlinghouse and Chris Larsen. I was hearing or seeing some things online about certain dates coming up, I think possibly this week or next week. Tell us the latest there, and what can we expect next?
Yeah, well, really understand, you're right. So the only thing that was pending before there can be an appeal that goes to the Second Circuit or even the U.S. Supreme Court related to the judge's summary judgment decision, there was the case against Brad Garlinghouse, Chris Larsen. I was on your show. I was saying, as was other people, that it was the weakest case ever. The SEC was going to lose it. And the SEC, instead of losing it, said they tapped out, right? They just said, we're not going to win. Plus, it would allow a lot of testimony, right? Bill Hinman or someone may have been called as a witness, and the SEC wanted to tap out from all that, drop the case. And so we're in the penalty phase. And if people remember in the library case, there was the summary judgment, and then there was, what is the appropriate remedy? And so the judge basically said, exchange sales are not securities sales. The sales or the gifting or giving XRP to developers or for other people, that type of transaction, not a security, and that the only ones that did were ones that had written contracts with institutions, and those are really in the early years. Now they add up to a lot of money, right? Because the judge included ODL sales, and so it came to like $770 million. And so what Ripple's going to be doing, the SEC is going to do is say, we want every sale to every institution to include. Ripple's going to say, well, wait a minute, these transactions shouldn't be included. So let's take an ODL transaction. If the person only used XRP and owned it for a matter of seconds and then resold it, Ripple will take another stab at saying to the judge, look, that they weren't relying on us. That was a utility transaction, right? And that should be excluded. Ripple will say also that there were exemptions. So if you're an accredited investor, I can sell you a security, right? You don't have to go register it because there's an exemption. Well, those institutions, by definition, are accredited investors. So Ripple's going to say, look at all these sales, Judge. They are exempt from Section 5 registration. And, out of that 770 million, I don't know how much that adds up to, right? But, Ripple's just going to knock it down, knock it down, knock it down.
I'm betting that adds up to the entire $770 million that they're claiming they should have back at the SEC. Think of it. The institutions are accredited level and beyond. They don't need to be informed if something's a security or not. This is an excellent, excellent point. I believe it could get the entire thing thrown out, to be perfectly honest. So this is going to get quite interesting here. Now, let me bring you very quickly here. So those are the next steps. But we all want to know, can the SEC appeal, and will there be a settlement? Let's listen to this stretch here, because you're going to want this.
We're expecting this case to wrap up in 2024. Do you think the SEC has any ability to do any type of appeal? Do you think it will get to that point?
Well, sure. Both sides have a right to appeal still. Let's say that the judge says, no, I'm going to not exclude ODL sales. They're included and you owe $50 million. I'm just picking numbers. Okay. Ripple could appeal that part of it. Like they could say the only part we're appealing is transactions, though the judge committed decision is over, regardless of what the judge decides, whether it's 1 million or 100 million fine for Ripple. The SEC can appeal to the Second Circuit saying Judge Torres was wrong, that XRP is a security and that XRP on exchanges are still securities, blah, blah, blah. Now, I want everyone to know, I have to remind them because this is such a nuanced issue. If the SEC were to appeal that decision, right, and they were to win, which they won't, in my opinion, so let me make that clear, that doesn't mean that the SEC, that the case is over and the SEC won. Because what the judge did was brilliant, in my opinion. I call it appeal proof, right? She said, when it comes to exchanges in XRP, because of the transaction and because XRP holders, she relied on our affidavits, many of them didn't even know who Ripple existed at the time, that they couldn't rely on the efforts of Ripple, right? If you don't know that Ripple exists, how do you rely on them? If you don't know that it's Ripple selling it to you, how do you rely on them? So she said the third prong of Howey is not satisfied. And since you have to satisfy all the prongs, I don't have to apply the first and the second prong. I don't even have to do that analysis because the third prong doesn't apply. So all that would happen is if the SEC appeals it, and if the SEC were to win, the Second Circuit would send it back to Judge Torres and say, okay, we overrule you on the third prong. Now go back and apply the other two prongs. And then she could turn around and say, Common Enterprise wasn't satisfied, rule back to Ripple. And then it would go back up on appeal, right? And I believe she would do that because the common enterprise factor, to me, is even worse for the SEC than the third prong. So the reality is the ruling we got is the law for the foreseeable future for the next couple of years. And I think I personally believe she will not be overruled on appeal.
Now, the next thing we're going to hear is really, is settlement still on the table? Now, you guys know where I'm at here. I've definitely thought that this has got to go the distance, Supreme Court. And I believe that because I believe that's how important the protocol, the XRP ledger really is, right? I believe that no question that for that level of value, transactions, money, tokenized value, all of it, to move across something like the XRP ledger inside the financial system, you are going to have legal finality. Now, do I believe it should have to take this long to get legal finality? No, I don't. but that happens to be the course, and we happen to be further down the road than anyone else is. So why stop now? Get that legal finality. Let's go to the Supreme Court. Let's have the highest court in the land rule in our favor, and then it will never be a question again. But let's hear what John says.
And do you feel but potentially a settlement could be in the works? Is that's still on the table?
I mean, I don't think so, right? But that's just me guessing. And to be fair to the audience, the listener who's thinking they think settlement is on the table is just as good as me, right? Their opinion is no better than mine. But the SEC is in this war. So if you're in the middle of the war and you're going after Coinbase, and you're going after Kraken, and you're going after Binance, and you're saying that Algo's security, and you're saying that Cardano's a security, and you're saying that these businesses are illegal, then how do you thread the needle with Ripple, right? You could, but it just, Gensler doesn't seem to, it's all war. It's scorched earth policy. We're in war. Elizabeth Warren just initiated that bill. It bans Bitcoin in the United States, right? It tries to, it says that validating nodes have to comply with anti-money laundering policy. So software code with nodes out there in the world have to, how do you know your customer if you're just a transaction? You're validating a transaction on a decentralized ledger. You can't. So that's why it's a de facto ban. And is the SEC going to say, okay, well, let's come to grips and agree that XRP sold on exchanges is not a security, but Cardano is?
Yeah.
So I don't see it,
but listen to this, because this is important, because of Coinbase's case that they have in front of the court right now becomes very crucial to whether this could be more drawn out in the process of getting the finality, or whether it could actually close the gap sooner. Take a listen.
The only thing that I see causing the settlement is if Coinbase wins their motion to dismiss or partially wins it. That's the only thing. Otherwise, it's still a war, man. We're in the middle of a war.
We are in the middle of a war, and thank you to both of those gentlemen for taking the time to sit down today. This is where we are, right? And the Coinbase case will be crucial. We have to watch to see what happens there. A partial win or a motion to dismiss could absolutely put more pressure on the SEC to settle with Ripple. We'll keep you up to date on anything that comes out, and that's going to do it for us. Not financial advice from me or anyone else, ladies and gentlemen. It's just my digital perspectives. I'll catch all of you on the next one.